All right, today we're going to dig into a really fundamental shift in how we support autistic individuals. We're moving beyond just looking at behaviors on the surface and getting to the biological root of it all, the nervous system. This is all about understanding the why behind the what.
So let's start with a question that I know parents, teachers, and therapists ask all the time. You've taught the coping strategies, you've practiced communication skills, but then, in the heat of the moment, it's like all that learning just evaporates. It is so frustrating, right? It can feel like you're just hitting a brick wall. But what if we're asking the wrong question altogether?
Okay, so what's really happening here? Why do these skills that you know are there suddenly just vanish? Well, the answer isn't about choice or defiance, not at all. It's actually rooted in our biology, specifically in how our brains are hardwired to handle stress. See, our brains have this amazing command center for all of our higher-level skills. It's called the prefrontal cortex. You can think of it as the brain's CEO. It's responsible for all the heavy lifting, like reasoning, planning, and thinking flexibly.
And all those skills we're talking about, problem solving, putting a name to an emotion, actually using a coping strategy, communicating what you need, even just following directions, these things are not automatic. They are complex jobs that require the brain's CEO to be calm, cool, and collected. If the brain isn't in that regulated state, then access to that office is basically denied.
And this brings us to a really crucial refrain. It's a game changer. Instead of asking, why aren't they using their skills, we need to start asking, do they currently have access to those skills? Just that simple shift in language changes everything. It moves us from a place of judgment or confusion to a place of genuine curiosity and support.
So what is it that flips this switch? What cuts off access to the brain's CEO? Well, it's a built-in safety mechanism, something that's hardwired into our nervous system to protect us from what it perceives as a threat.
We call this state dysregulation, and it's so much more than just being upset, it's a full-on biological alarm state. When the brain senses a threat, and that could be sensory, emotional, or social, it literally reroutes power away from that logical thinking center and sends it straight to our primitive survival responses. In other words, the CEO is put on hold and the security team takes over.
There's a fantastic map for understanding this called Polyvagal Theory. It basically breaks down our nervous system's responses into 3 different states. The easiest way to think about it is like a traffic light for your internal world. First up, you've got the ventral state. This is our green light. When we're here, we feel safe, we feel connected, we're social. Our prefrontal cortex, our CEO, is fully online. This is when we're ready to learn, engage, and use all those complex skills we've been talking about. But if our brain detects a threat, it can shift into the sympathetic state. This is our yellow light. It's that classic fight-or-flight response. We feel anxious, we feel overwhelmed, and our bodies are mobilized for action. Logic starts to fade into the background as those survival instincts kick into high gear. And then, if a threat feels totally inescapable, the system can shift again, this time into the dorsal state. This is the red light, shutdown. A person might look withdrawn or disengaged with really low energy. And it is so important to understand this is not avoidance. It's the body's ultimate protection mode, just conserving energy to survive. And here is the absolute bottom line, the key takeaway. Teaching, reasoning, therapy, pretty much any intervention, it only truly works when a person's nervous system is in that green light ventral state. Trying to teach a coping skill to someone in fight or flight is like trying to teach calculus during a fire alarm. The brain just isn't available for it. So once you really get that, it forces a massive shift in how we approach support. It literally changes the entire game.
Let this one sink in, because it's the core of everything. Regulation is not a prerequisite to intervention. Regulation is the intervention. Our primary job isn't to teach a skill on top of a dysregulated state. It's to help the nervous system get back to a place of safety first. That's the work.
And when you put on this new lens, everything you thought you were seeing starts to look completely different. What used to look like non-compliance is now understood as a lack of capacity in this moment. What we might have labeled attention-seeking is actually connection-seeking, and what looked like avoidance is really a desperate attempt at overwhelm management. Okay, so that's the why. It's huge, right? But what about the how? What do we actually do with all this information? Let's get into the practical toolkit that this regulation-first approach gives us. So this new toolkit really has 6 core strategies.
First, you start with co-regulation. That means using your own calm presence to help someone else's nervous system feel safe. Then you lower the demand. Reduce the questions, the expectations, the sensory input. Third, bring in sensory supports, because the body regulates before the brain does. From there, you build predictability, you validate feelings before you try to redirect, and this is so important. You only try to teach new skills after the storm has passed and that person is regulated again.
Here is a super powerful mental checklist you can use in those really tough moments. Just pause and ask yourself, is this a regulation issue or a skill issue? What state is their nervous system in, green, yellow, or red? Is what I'm doing right now increasing or decreasing their sense of safety? And finally, what's one demand I can take off the table, and how can I offer some co-regulation right now? And you know, all of this leads to one final, really important shift. We have to completely change how we even define what success looks like. Because the old metrics, they just don't fit anymore when we use a regulation-first lens.
The old way of measuring success was all about compliance, right? Fewer problem behaviors, more tasks getting done. But neuroaffirming metrics are totally different. We celebrate a faster recovery time after being dysregulated. We celebrate when someone has increased self-awareness. Success is no longer just about doing the task, it's about having the capacity to recognize you need a break and feeling safe enough to ask for one.
So the ultimate goal here completely shifts. It's not just about changing a behavior you see on the surface. It's about supporting the nervous system that's underneath it all. Because when we help a person feel safe, we unlock the very capacity and the very skills we were trying to teach them all along. And that leaves us with one final question to take with you. The next time you're faced with a challenging moment, will you focus on correcting the behavior you see on the surface, or will you focus on supporting the nervous system that's driving it? Because that choice, it can make all the difference in the world.